It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in our quiet suburban neighborhood when the unthinkable happened. HOA cops showed up at our doorstep, handcuffs gleaming, ready to haul my sister, Emily, away over a petty violation. But what started as a ridiculous power trip spiraled into chaos when the Secret Service rolled in, flashing badges and demanding answers, leaving everyone, including me, wondering what Emily had gotten herself into. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how a simple misunderstanding over a mailbox turned our lives upside down. Emily and I have lived in this neighborhood, Willow Creek, for about 5 years. It's the kind of place where people obsess over perfectly trimmed hedges and matching patio furniture. The HOA here isn't just strict, it's borderline tyrannical. They've got their own little patrol squad, these self-important guys in polo shirts who call themselves compliance officers, but act like they're SWAT. Everyone just calls them the HOA cops. They drive around in golf carts, issuing citations for things like leaving your trash can out past 7 a.m. or having a lawn that's half an inch too long. Most of us roll our eyes and pay the fines to avoid the hassle, but Emily? She's never been one to back down. Emily's 28, 2 years younger than me, and she's always had this fiery streak. She's not rude or anything, just principled. If she thinks something's unfair, she'll call it out, no matter who's listening. That's probably why she ended up on the HOA's radar. It all started a few months ago when our mailbox got dented during a storm. The HOA sent us a notice demanding we replace it within 30 days or face a $500 fine. Emily thought that was absurd. Why should we pay for a new mailbox when the damage wasn't our fault? She wrote back, politely but firmly, explaining the situation and asking for an extension. The HOA didn't care. They sent another notice, this time with a $100 non-compliance fee tacked on. That's when Emily dug in her heels. She started researching HOA laws, spending hours on her laptop, muttering about overreach and abuse of power. She found out that our HOA's bylaws didn't even require immediate replacement of a damaged mailbox, and she sent them a letter quoting their own rules. I thought it was a bit much, but I admired her guts. I mean, who takes on the HOA like that? Most people just grumble and comply. Not Emily. She even went to a board meeting and spoke during the open forum, calmly laying out her case while the board members stared at her like she'd grown horns. I was there, sitting in the back, half proud, half worried she was poking a bear. The HOA didn't take kindly to being challenged. They started nitpicking everything about our property. Suddenly, we were getting citations for unauthorized garden decorations, a single gnome Emily got as a gag gift, and excessive vehicle parking. My car was in the driveway for 2 days while I fixed a flat. It felt personal, like they were trying to wear us down. Emily didn't budge. She paid the fines under protest, keeping meticulous records, and told me she was building a case to take to small claims court if they kept escalating. I told her to let it go, why fight a losing battle? But she just smiled and said, they picked the wrong sister. Things came to a head on that Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, when I heard a sharp knock at the door. Emily was still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone on the couch. I opened the door, and there they were, 2 HOA cops, both middle-aged guys with clipboards and smug expressions. The taller one, who I recognized as Gary, the HOA's head compliance officer, held up a citation. "We're here for Emily Harper," he said, like he was reading a warrant. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "What, are you arresting her over the mailbox?" Gary didn't crack a smile. "She's violated multiple HOA regulations, refused to comply with lawful orders, and now she's facing detainment for trespassing on community property." Trespassing? I was floored. Emily walked over, her arms crossed, and asked what community property they were talking about. The other guy, who never gave his name, said she'd been seen tampering with HOA signage near the entrance last week. Emily's eyes narrowed. "You mean the sign I fixed after some kid spray-painted it? You're welcome, by the way." I could tell this wasn't going anywhere good. Gary pulled out a pair of zip ties, actual zip ties, like they were ready to play cop for real, and told Emily to turn around. I stepped between them, my heart racing. You can't just arrest someone over an HOA rule. You're not the police. Gary smirked and said they had authority to detain non-compliant residents under some obscure bylaw. Emily, calm as ever, told me to grab my phone and record everything. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking, as Gary grabbed her wrist and started zip-tying her hands behind her back. She didn't resist, but she kept talking, loud enough for my camera to catch it. For the record, my name is Emily Harper, and I'm being unlawfully detained by Gary Thompson and an unidentified individual acting under the Willow Creek HOA on June 17, 2025. I was panicking, dialing 911, when Emily gave me this look, like, "Don't worry, I've got this." But I was worried. These guys were acting way beyond their pay grade, and I had no idea what they planned to do with her. They marched her toward their golf cart, parked in our driveway, and I followed, yelling that I was calling the real police. Gary just waved me off, saying they'd process her at the HOA office and I could pick her up after she paid her fines. Process her? What was this, Guantanamo? The 911 operator picked up, and I started explaining the situation, but before I could finish, I heard tires screeching. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up, blocking the golf cart in our driveway. 4 people in dark suits jumped out, 2 men and 2 women, all wearing earpieces and moving with this scary efficiency. One of the men, tall with a buzz cut, flashed a badge and shouted, "United States Secret Service. Step away from the detainee now." The HOA cops froze, their faces draining of color. Gary dropped his clipboard, and the other guy raised his hands like he was in a stick-up. I was just as confused as they were. Secret Service? What were they doing here? The woman next to Buzz Cut approached Emily, who was still zip-tied, and asked, "Are you Emily Harper?" Emily nodded, cool as a cucumber, and said, "Yes, ma'am." The woman pulled out a knife, cut the zip ties, and told her to stay put. Then she turned to Gary and his buddy, her voice ice-cold. "You two are in serious trouble. Detaining a federal asset without authorization is a felony." Federal asset? My jaw hit the floor. Emily, my sister, who burns toast and argues with HOA nerds, was a federal asset? I looked at her, expecting her to be as shocked as I was, but she just rubbed her wrists and gave me a tiny shrug, like this was no big deal. The Secret Service agent started barking orders, telling Gary and his partner to get on their knees and keep their hands visible. Gary stammered, "This is a misunderstanding. We're just enforcing HOA rules." Buzz Cut wasn't having it. He read them their rights while another agent cuffed them, real cuffs, not zip ties, and loaded them into one of the SUVs. By now, neighbors were peeking out their windows, and a small crowd had gathered across the street. I was still holding my phone, recording everything, though I wasn't sure what I was even capturing. The woman agent, who seemed to be in charge, pulled Emily aside and started talking to her in low tones. I couldn't hear much, but I caught phrases like compromised location and immediate extraction. Extraction? Were they taking her somewhere? I stepped closer, demanding to know what was going on. The woman turned to me, her expression softening just a bit. "Ma'am, I'm Agent Carter. Your sister's safe, but we need to relocate her for her protection. We'll explain what we can, but you need to trust us." Trust them? I didn't even know them. I looked at Emily, who nodded and said, "Sarah, it's okay. I'll call you as soon as I can." Before I could argue, Agent Carter escorted her to the second SUV, and they sped off, leaving me standing in the driveway with my phone still recording and my head spinning. The remaining agents stayed behind, securing the scene and talking to the real police, who'd just arrived. I overheard one of them say the HOA cops were being charged with false imprisonment and interfering with a federal operation. Whatever Emily was involved in, it was way bigger than a dented mailbox. The next few hours were a blur. I sat in my living room, trying to process everything. Emily, a federal asset? It didn't add up. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, for crying out loud. She spent her days making logos for small businesses and binge-watching true crime documentaries. When had she found time to get mixed up with the Secret Service? I started going through her stuff, not snooping, just looking for clues. Her laptop was password protected, and her desk was a mess of sketchbooks and coffee mugs. Nothing screamed, secret agent. But then I remembered something. About a year ago, she'd started taking these random trips. She'd say she was visiting clients or attending design conferences, but she was always vague about the details. I'd teased her about having a secret boyfriend, but she'd just laughed it off. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted her, begging her to tell me she was okay, but no response. By evening, I was a wreck, pacing the house and jumping at every sound. Finally, around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. It was Emily. "Sarah, I'm fine," she said before I could get a word in. "I can't tell you much, but I'm safe. I'm sorry you got dragged into this." I demanded answers. What was she involved in? Why was the Secret Service there? What did federal asset mean? She sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "It's complicated. I've been working with some people, helping them with stuff. It's not what you think. I'll explain when I can, but you have to promise not to tell anyone. Not Mom, not your friends, nobody." I promised, mostly because I was too stunned to argue. She said she'd be gone for a while but would check in when it was safe. Before she hung up, she added, "Oh, and Sarah? Don't pay the HOA fines. They're done." I laughed, despite everything, because that was so Emily, still fighting the HOA from whatever secret bunker she was in. The next few days were surreal. The HOA cops, Gary and his buddy, were all over the local news. Turns out, their little detainment stunt wasn't their first rodeo. They'd been strong-arming residents for years, using fake bylaws to extort fines. The Secret Service's involvement was barely mentioned, just a vague line about federal authorities stepping in. I kept my mouth shut, like Emily asked, but it wasn't easy. Neighbors kept knocking, asking what happened, and I just played dumb, saying it was all a misunderstanding. The HOA itself went radio silent. The board resigned en masse, and a new management company took over. Our citations mysteriously vanished, and the dented mailbox? Someone replaced it for free while I was at work one day. I had a feeling Emily's new friends had something to do with it. I still didn't know what she was involved in. Something to do with her design skills, maybe? Cryptography. Cybersecurity. I'd watched enough spy movies to come up with a dozen theories, each crazier than the last. Emily called again a week later, this time from another unknown number. She sounded more like herself, cracking jokes about the HOA cops probably crying in jail. She still couldn't tell me much, but she promised she'd be home soon. "Just don't freak out if I show up with a new haircut," she said, laughing. I told her I'd kill her if she didn't spill the beans when she got back, and she just said, "Deal." It's been a month since that crazy morning, and I'm still waiting for Emily to come home. I check my phone obsessively, hoping for a text or a call. The neighborhood's quieter now, without the HOA cops patrolling, but it feels different. I keep looking at our new mailbox, wondering what other secrets Emily's been keeping. Whatever she's doing, I know she's out there, fighting her own battles, probably with that same stubborn streak that got her in trouble with the HOA in the first place. I miss her, but I'm also kind of proud. My little sister, the federal asset. Who would have thought?